Welcome to French Connections, our weekly look at the intricacies of life here in France with Florence Villeminot. Hi, Flo. Now, we've already explored the cliche that French workers are on strike all the time. Part of the reason that stereotype seems to stick around is because when French workers strike, it's often very visible, it's very disruptive, and that is certainly true when workers from the French state rail operator go on strike.
And that's what we're going to explore today. The SNCF, the Société Nationale des Chemins de Fer, that was created back in 1938. It's long been viewed as kind of a mythical treasure of the French state, and it's one of the world's biggest transport groups today. Each day, 14 million people jump on board one of the company's trains. So you have the high-speed TGV trains, but you also have the local Transilien services, as well as the cross-channel Eurostar, the Thalys trains that take you to Brussels and Amsterdam. The SNCF is actually rated as one of the best rail operators in Europe in terms of speed, comfort, punctuality, price, and safety.
Now, it's true the National Railway Service here in France does have a lot to celebrate and has done in the 80 years that it's been around, but it's also facing some massive problems.
Indeed, the SNCF is riddled with a massive debt, 50 billion euro debt. Now, critics say this is because of bad public investments, particularly in the high-speed TGV rail lines. But the current government says that reform is necessary, especially as the SNCF is gearing up to open up to external competition. The government wants to bring the company into the 21st century and essentially do it at all means, even if it means bypassing the parliament.
La situation est alarmante.
The situation is alarming, not to say unbearable. Whether or not French people take the train, they're paying more and more money for a service that's declining.
Un service qui marche de moins en moins bien.
So tough talk there from Edouard Philippe, the Prime Minister, but reforming the SNCF is an explosive issue, and it often drives people into the streets. In fact, most governments have backed down from reforming the SNCF.
These problems have existed for 10 to 20 years. No government has tackled them. The question is whether this government's spiel that it's the startup champion is compatible with a company that employs 150,000 people who have a status they inherited from the 19th century.
Now, the real stickiest issue for the government is this so-called special status that rail workers have here in France. Tell us a bit more about that.
Well, let's look at our word du jour, and you'll learn more about it. It's cheminot. This is really the term at the heart of the debate. It's a generic term for anyone who works for a railway service, but it's also the name of this special status that people who work for the SNCF have. It's a status that they acquired nearly a century ago when there were still coal-powered steam trains. Now, of the SNCF's 150,000 employees, 92% of them have this special status. So it goes for train drivers, electricians, but also office workers, ticket sellers, and computer workers.
And this special status, this cheminot status, has loads of perks.
There are lots of advantages, critics would say privileges. Let's take a look at some of them. For instance, cheminots have a job for life, which means that they can't be fired for economic reasons. They have regular salary increases. They have actually lighter working hours because they have more paid holiday. They also get early retirement. They can retire between 52 and 57, which is a decade earlier than most workers, though it's not really an option for most employees. Do keep that in mind. They also have a special pension status. Basically, their pension is calculated on the last 6 months that they work and not the last 25 years that they work, like most people. And then you saw it there, they get reduced train fares. They pay 10% of ticket prices, and that goes for their spouses and their kids, and their parents, grandparents, and parents-in-law get 4 free trips a year. Now, as you can imagine, all this costs the state a lot of money, and to tighten the belt, the government wants to get rid of this status, the cheminot status, for new hires.
Right, but not for the people who have the status already.
Not for the people who have the status, but they still want to defend the status for incoming generations, and they insist that they deserve it.
We work at night, odd hours that are never the same. It's practically impossible to organise your private life. We give a lot to the company, and in return we get advantages that are completely deserved and justified.
Our backs are against the wall. We're losing money today to avoid losing everything tomorrow. We're telling passengers your train might be cancelled today to ensure it's there tomorrow.
And to defend their rights, SNCF workers are staging an unprecedented kind of strike, a rolling strike set to last for 3 months.
They're calling it the grève perlée, the pearled strike, which sounds beautiful, but it's actually quite complicated for passengers. Let's take a look. You can see this is what the strike is going to look like. They're going to strike for 2 days, work for 3 days. You can see this will help you out if you do need to take the SNCF trains. Now, what does public opinion think about all this? It's a mixed bag, and that might seem interesting because there is a lot of travel chaos. A lot of people, though, support the SNCF and the fact that they're, defending their rights. Others, though, are a little more critical. Let's take a listen.
I sympathize with what they're doing. They're right. You have to defend yourself and what you've achieved. I don't mind the disruption, even if it means I'm late to work. People need to show the government that they're angry.
The SNCF is always late. You don't get paid back or hardly anything. Given the price we pay, we need reforms and competition.
We're squished like farm animals. We're hostages here.
We want to go to work, but there are no trains. Cheminots, get to work!
So as you can see, a real battle of public opinion underway. But in many ways, this is about much more than just reforming the SNCF.
It's really symbolic about reforming France in general and how to go about reforming France. And that's why it's such a hot-button issue. That's why it's so emotional, and that's why it's so divisive, because you have those on the one hand who say that France needs to change. It needs to become more flexible and more modern. And then you also have those who say that, look, reforming the cheminot status is the first step. It's going to start a domino effect that will destroy France's public service in general. And so that's why so many people are ready to grin and bear the travel chaos. Essentially, they say it's a necessary evil to protect the greater good, and it's a very divisive issue.
It is, and a very complicated one. Thank you, Flo, for breaking it down for us, Florence Villeminot, with that French Connections. Don't forget, if you have any of your own questions, tweet Flo at Flo Villeminot.